Hello friends, welcome to Help Me Coder, the channel which talks about technology and helps the coder community out there. And in this part 10 of Power Automate series, we are going to look into variable, where we're going to dive into what these variables are, how do you use them, and what are the different types of variables available in Power Automate. So let's quickly jump in. Variables are like small containers that hold information during your flow execution. You can think of them as boxes. Like in a box, you can store information in a box, you can replace the information from the box or remove it, or you can change the information in the box. Similarly, in programming, you have these variables which can store different kind of data inside them, and you can use them during the whole flow execution. The point to note is, when you define a variable inside Power Automate, you need to make sure you first initialize them or define them at the very start. You need to come up with a name of that variable, then what kind of data type it will store. So it can store integer, it can store string, it can store float. So you have to choose what kind of data they will carry or hold. So once you choose that, you can also define the name of that variable, because you will be referring this variable throughout your flow using this particular name. So that is also very important. And also, during the initialization of the variable, you can define a default value for it. You can leave it blank as well, that is also fine. In Power Automate, the variable are strongly typed. What means strongly typed? Means that once you define the variable at the top, they stick to that data type. You cannot do like you start a variable with integer, then later you change that variable to a float. This cannot be done. You have to have a strongly typed variable. You define them at the top, and these variables are global. So once you define them at the top, means they can be accessed throughout your flow. So these variables are global in nature. Now let us see what are the different variable type. We have string, so they store text, and things like employee name or messages can be stored on them. Integers, which are like whole numbers, and they can store what is the count of a particular operation, what is the score or the quantity of something. Then there are floats, which are like with decimal points. So for any salary calculation or any mathematical average operations, all those things, you can store those things in float. So you need to know what kind of data it will hold. So based on that, you need to choose different data type. Boolean, you need to, if you are going to store true or false, making some decisions true or false, then you need to use Boolean for those kind of things, like is approved is equal to true. So for those you can use Boolean. Then there is array and object. I don't want to touch it over here. I will come to them later part of the video, so stick with me. But just to let you know, arrays are like list information, where for example you want to store multiple data of the same type together, like multiple names, multiple emails together, or even multiple objects together in a structured way, in a list way. Then you use array. And object is something like a particular row of information for a particular purpose. You can use object, like employee detail. So one employee detail, you can store it as an object inside over here. We'll see more on this. Now from Power Automate perspective, there are few actions that are available to you. We will see the demo, but just to let you know, there are few actions that you can use, and they are all tagged under variable. As you see over here, these are some of the actions that are available to you. Major ones that we will start with is the initialize variable. Define at the top, set up what kind of data they will hold. We will see that. Then you will see how do you append to string variable. You will see how do you increment variable for those integer ones, decrement variable for those integer and float ones. All those things you can see it over here. Then append to array variable. So if you initialize a variable within array, you can use this append to array variable to basically add things into it. Similarly in string, increment variable to add something to it, append to string variable to add something to string variable. These are operations are very similar in nature, in how they work. The only thing is that they work for different kind of data type, whether you are string, array or integer. So those are the things. Question is, when should you use variable? and it's a valid question. You will be using variables across, but there are a lot of places where you need to use variables. Imagine you want to store a value and reuse it later part of the flow. You need to use a variable. You want to count something or track something inside your flow. You need to use variable. You want to build dynamic messages. So imagine some message is there, some content you are pulling from the list, certain thing you want to put, randomly change that message, and then you want to send the email out. Those things, dynamic messagings, you might want to use variables. Controlling the logic, you can use the variables. You, for complex data structure, you might be using variables. So these are different things, but don't worry, we will do a demo, then you will get a hang of it. So let's quickly start the demo first. So currently I'm on make.powerautomate.com, and here you are going to create a new flow. So for this demo I'm going to create an instant cloud flow. I will give it a name as learning variables, and then manually trigger a flow for just this demo, and then click a create. I have a list in SharePoint. This is called as expense claim list, and in this expense claim list what we have here is different kind of employees, their expenses, and whether that expense has been approved or not. And for now, in our first demo that we are doing, we are going to see or count how many expenses are there with status as approved. So we can see there are 2, so we're going to count that automatically. Then the second variable that we are going to see is, we can say it is a float variable, where we are going to count what is the total expense of this whole details inside this list. So we're going to count that. So there are 2 variables. One is integer for this status, where we're going to count number of items with an approved status, and then the second is the total expense claim. So for doing that, let me go to the Power Automate, click on this plus icon, and here we are going to search for variables. As I mentioned, all the things are inside variable. This one was the screen that I showed you earlier. First thing is to initialize the variable. So initialize the variable, and we are going to name it as var count approval status, and better to name it correctly, else you will forget what this variable does. So you can say initialize approval status. So this is what we are going to say, and then this initialization is integer because we are just doing the count. You can set the start value as default value. As I mentioned earlier, you can set up the default value. So this is how you initialize the variable. You give a proper name which will be using it, and then you define the data type of that variable, and then you assign a value, a default value to it. And remember to give a proper naming of that variable. Then second thing, the second variable that we are going to create was, again it's part of variable. We are again initializing the variable. So I will say initialize variable. We are counting the total expense, so we will say var total expense, and then we're going to name it as, so this is var total expense variable, and then we are going to name it as float, and we're gonna don't need to give any value as of now, or you can leave it blank as well, so no issue with that. Remember to give it a name over here. We can say total expense. Okay, now this one is done. Now we're gonna see is we have to connect to that SharePoint list. So click on this plus, we're gonna say SharePoint, and we're gonna say connect to this get items. So to get the items we have to connect to this SharePoint list. So my site name is this one. I will say help me coder. Okay, so this one connects. Then the list name, it will automatically show me my list name, which is expense claim. I select that. That's it. So you're gonna connect now to your list. Now we have to go one item at a time in this whole list. Control apply to each, because we are going through each item. So each item of this get item. So the previous step, get items body value. So right now we are, if you don't know how do you use apply to each, I have shared in my previous video how do you use apply to it. So we are using dynamic variable to connect to the previous step and get the whole details. I'm getting the whole set of items and then I'm attaching it over here. So I got every item over here. Then I'm going to work on each item. My condition that I want to check is for only status as approved item, the first thing that I'm checking. So again, this is a control that we are going to do, and we are going to check a condition. So in this condition, what we are checking, let's go into the fx part, dynamic content. If you see variables in the get item, status value, and I will say okay. So this is the function that got added. Now I will say is equal to, and what is the value that we are looking to check is approved. So now if the condition is true, it comes up over here, and we are going to increase the count of whatever variable we assigned earlier. So we have to use again a variable, which is, I will say variable, and in this we are going to say increment variable. So when we say increment variable, we have to choose from this drop down. So we are going to say count. This one is we are going to increase, so we will say count, and with what number? With 1. So as many times this comes in this particular true block, we are going to increase the count, and it will keep on increasing. Then finally at the end I will print this. So I can just use a data operation called compose to just print it out. So I will say total expense is this increment variable, correct? So I will just click on this dynamic, and then we will say total or count application status. So this is the count that I'm going to print over here. The second thing that we are going to do is we are going to count the total amount of all the employees, of all their expenses. So this one will not go into condition because we have to do it for all the users, so it can come up, it can stay inside apply to each. So I don't have to do it inside the condition. We don't want to check anything. So again we have to use variable. So I will click on increment variable, and in this increment variable I am going to say total expense, and then by how much it will increase. So this time this is not a fixed number. This depend upon the type of data that we received. So in the dynamic value, I will go over here in the get items. We are going to choose the amount. So that is something that will come up, and we will add that amount in the total expense. So that is going to get increased. So instead of increment variable 1, I will change it as increment by amount. So I can then click on a compose again, and I can write this one. I can again connect to dynamic variable, and I can say current total expense. So before this I can say total expense is this one. So again, naming convention very important. So I can say compose show total approved. Then only I will come to know what this is doing, and then this compose showing total expense. Okay, so now let us quickly run this. Let us save this. Don't worry about this warning for now. Run this flow, and done. If you see increment by amount, so this is the variable that we are incrementing. So here the total expense is 300. In the next count, this total expense will become 8,000. Then it becomes, again it will change to 12,000 because it is adding everything at every step. So sometimes it is going to increment variable, so it is just increasing by 1. The count is increasing by 1. Here it is dynamically increasing by the actual amount. So then at the end you can see the total approved item is 2 items. We saw that in our Excel file. This one also there are 2 approved items. Then the total expense. So the total expense is 27,500. And if you see over here as well, if you count everything over here, it will become same thing. So now let us see how do we work with string variables. So let us go back to our list. Imagine in this expense claim, we want to club all the employees into one string variable. And let us see how do we do that. So imagine we go over here again, we go and choose variable, and we have to first define the variable. So we will say initialize the variable. I will say the variable name is var string demo, and then I will choose the variable type as string. You can leave it as empty, or I can just initialize with something. So I will say name, and then I will just add all the names together over here. So this is the initializing of variable. I will just name it string variable, just to name it correctly. This is applied to each loop where we are going through all the items of the list. Here we are going to again append all the names together. So I will go over here and I will say append to string variable. So similar to integer, where we have append to increment variable and decrement variable, which is to add something to it. Similarly, we have append to string variable over here, that we only see the string variable name. We don't see those integer variable name because it is just for string purpose. So we'll choose string var string demo, which is our string variable name, and we need to specify a value. So now this is a dynamic value because we are taking in each apply to each loop. While we are iterating through the list, we will be adding the name. So in this we will choose the name of the person. The name gets stored inside the title, so I will just say title, and if you hover over it, it will show you, it says apply to each title, means each name. So on one iteration it will keep on adding and adding and adding, something like that. So this is how the append to string variable works. Now if you want to print how the print looks like, we can just use data operation and compose, and I can just print that string demo as over here, and then let's test it. So okay, now let's test it out. It's done. So the string variable, we have defined the string variable over here, and if you see, we are doing appends to string variable. So here the output is Alice because it is the first iteration. Then if you see, we go to the second one, we again click on this append to string variable, the output will keep on increasing. If you see, it is becoming Alice Bob. Now there is no space given in between, nothing comma, so it doesn't looks like, it looks like a once, it's all clubbing together. So what we can do is you give some space between it. So right now you are adding the title, correct? This one. So to add a space, we can create our function over here. We can use concat function, and in this concat function I can refer the dynamic content which was earlier title. So this is the each and every title, the name comes in over here. Then I will use a separator. I will use separator as comma. Then I will use to give a new line, I have something as decode URI component. So this is the one that gives a new line. So now I will add this. So this gets added over here, and then I will save it, and then let's test it out. Trigger, and I will test this, and if you see, this is Alice the first time. What it happened, it has added a new line as well. Then I go to the next one, then it has added Bob. So if you see the raw output, it is adding Alice new line, Bob new line, and all those things it is doing. And at the end, if you are printing everything over here, so if you see the output over here, it is printing everything, Alice, Bob, Carol and David. So this is how it is adding new line, and you can club all the strings that are coming together. So append to string is only useful when you are manipulating the string at runtime, changing things here and there. So thanks for watching this video, and if you have any questions, you can definitely get back to me in the comment section below, and I will definitely try my best to reply you over there. Please remember to hit the like and subscribe button on our channel Help Me Coder. This will keep us motivated so that we can bring awesome content in our future videos. Until next time, happy coding. Thank you.